Labą dieną visiems. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Norėčiau kalbėti lietuviškai, bet kadangi kongresas tarptautinis, tai kalbėsiu angliškai. Aš tikiuosi, kad bus suprantama bent konceptualiai ir tiems, kurie lietuviškai supranta, ne tik angliškai. Pirmiausia, aš noriu pradėti nuo didelės padėkos profesoriai Daunoravičienei, organizaciniam komitetui, visiems absoliučiai žmonėms, kurie padarė tokį nuostabų renginį, fantastišką renginį, labai reikalingą ir puikų. Ir tiek daug įdomių pranešimų, požiūrių, interpretacijų, tai yra nuostabu iš tikrųjų. Tai reikia pasidžiaugti, kad toks nuostabus dalykas vyksta, skirtas mūsų visų mylimam Čiurlioniui. And now I will switch into English. So, Čiurlionis was not very much interested in politics. He was not very much interested in modern art or theosophy, which is attested by his relatives many times. However, he was very much interested in art, in music, in God, and harmony. So harmony is exactly what I'm gonna speak about. Well, first of all, the very ancient, the first description of harmony we have is from ancient times, ancient Greek times of the Pythagoreans. So basically, the Pythagorean fragment of Philolaïus is the first clear description of harmony. However, before we get into this description of harmony, there are several very key points how to understand harmony. And Aristotle, in his Metaphysics, he describes 10 opposites which he says are opposites of the Pythagoreans. Harmony is not between things which are similar. If things are similar, we don't need to be harmonized. So harmony is between the things which are contrary, between the things, forces, attitudes, even political parties or people who are opposing each other. So harmony is the science of oppositions, or in other words, how to harmonize the opposing, the fighting things. Because normally, everything in the world is opposing, is fighting, or most of the things are fighting. So, in order to read those 10 opposites, we can read them horizontally, which means like right opposes left, or male opposes female, or light opposes darkness, or good opposes bad. However, it is very important to read those oppositions also vertically, not only horizontally. So this means that all those oppositions on one side is one opposition, and on the other side is the other opposition. This is the concept of unity. So male is the same as right. Right is the same as good and light and square and oblong and straight line, etc., etc., etc. So keep this in mind, because we need to read the oppositions in both ways, not only horizontally but also vertically. The most important thing that the harmony is logos, the Greek concept, philosophical concept, which every philosopher should try to understanding logos. I start with principles. I will not analyze all the principles, all the 10 oppositions, because there's many more of those, but I will go through a couple concepts only. And the first one is male and female, which is beautifully expressed here in the painting of Čiurlionis. Male and female holding the world. Two oppositions holding the world in their hands. So, speaking of male and female, now we jump into the definition of harmony. And Philolaios' fragment, which basically for a long time was seen as unauthentic and important, is of the highest importance in order to understand what logos is, in order to understand what harmony is. Let me read it. The extent of the harmony is syllaba and dioxyan is greater than syllaba by epogdon. For from hypata to mesa is syllaba, and from mesa to neata is dioxyan. But from neata to trita is dioxyan, and what is between trita, or in other words, paramesa, and mesa is epogdon. Syllaba is epitritos, dioxyan is yemiolic, and diapason is double. Therefore, the harmony is 5 epogdons and 2 diesis. Dioxyan is 3 epogdons and a diesis, and syllaba is 2 epogdons and diesis. This is the ancient description which, if you are musicians, if you studied music, you will easily recognize. Of course, if you're not familiar with ancient Greek musical terms, it is difficult to understand, but I will try to explain it as easily as possible. The description of Philolaios is exactly what the ancient Greek initial 2 tetrachords are, the scheme of the tetrachords. So basically, you can see that from hypata meson, which is right here, goes 1 tetrachord, which is tetrachord meson, and the second tetrachord goes up here, which is tetrachord diazogmenon. This is the tetrachord which is disjunct tetrachord, so this means that it has a disjunction of epogdon. Now, the mathematical thing, and I will be very short with mathematics because it's a complicated stuff and I can give a huge lecture on that, but I will skip the difficulties. The problem with this description of Philolaios, which is a rule of harmony, that epimoric ratios cannot be divided into 2 equal halves. And this has to do with a dissonance, because if we make a division of a tetrachord right in the middle, which is a geometric mean, basically we will get a triton, we get the most disharmonious interval, the evil interval, so said. So epimoric ratios, we need to be divided into 2 parts. The first part would go from hypata meson to here, right? So it would form dioxyan, and the rest would form syllaba from Philolaios' description. These are harmonic and arithmetic means. This is the rule of harmony which comes again from ancient Pythagorean Archytas, and he speaks of this as a rule. Basically, if you take any interval, even epogdon interval, as a ratio, it cannot be divided into 2 equal halves. So, meaning that the division goes not exactly equal, not exactly similar, not even, okay? Now, if we take another step into ancient Greek mathematics, we have method of calculation which is called gnomon. Gnomons are basically those structures which you get numbers. And thus, you remember the two oppositions, initial Pythagorean oppositions, is a square, which is right here, a square number, and the oblong number. So you can see that we would have square of 4 dots, 9 dots, 16 dots. And speaking of oblong numbers, we would get 2 and 6 and etc., etc., etc. Now, the series of gnomons would go in a square, would go 1, 3, 5, 7, which is odd numbers. Again, the opposition of the Pythagoreans. And the oblong numbers would make the series of 2, 4, 6, 8, which is even numbers, which is the Pythagorean oppositions of odd and even numbers. Now, the odd versus even is the same as male versus female. And it is the same, speaking in musical terms, the opposition of deoxyan and syllaba, or later terms which came used actually at the same time was diatessaron and diapente. Diapente meaning deoxyan and diatessaron meaning syllaba. So diapente meaning through 5, diatessaron meaning through 4. Okay? From this we get interval ratios, which is 3 to 2 and 4 to 3, which are epimoric ratios, and at the same time which are male ratio and female ratio. Epitritos, female ratio, and hemiolic, the male ratio. For those of you who know music, this is the perfect fifth and the perfect fourth. The perfect fifth and the perfect fourth is harmonized by diapason, by harmony. And diapason is, speaking in our contemporary terms, is the octave. Okay? So this is very important for Čiurlionis as well. If we analyze his works, we would see that these are religious works. The first one is Thoughtful Angels, then Our Father, and De Profundis. This is the use of those intervals. And there's more. I didn't do the proper analysis, which I could do actually, but it would take more time. I would just wanted to show you, but there are some, and we will come back to this pretty soon. Now, in the 19th century, there was Adolf Bernhard Marx, who wrote a passage on a form of sonata, stating that there is two opposing powers, Hauptsatz versus Seitensatz or Gegensatz. Here is the description of Marx. In this pair of themes, the first theme is the one determined at the outset, that is, with a primary freshness and energy. Consequently, that which is energetically, emphatically, absolutely shaped, the dominating and determining feature. On the other hand, the second theme is the idea created afterwards, serving as a contrast, depending on and determined by the former consequently, and according to its nature necessarily the milder, one more supple than empathically shaped, as if it were the feminine to that preceding masculine. In just this sense, each of the two themes is different, and only with one another do they constitute something higher, more perfect, meaning diapason. So as you can see, this is a middle of the 19th century, the theory of sonata. I don't know if Marx took it directly from the Pythagoreans, or Čiurlionis read some Plato or Pythagorean fragments, but this notion of sonata was also taken by Lobe, And in 1980, in 1855, for example, the Leipzig theorist, Johann Christian Lobe, outlined a formula for dramatic overtures, whereby each theme was interpretable as a character. The first theme represented the principal hero of a story. German you can read. And the second theme, the principal heroine, while other portions of the exposition could concern themselves with lesser characters. So basically, later on in the 19th century, Lobe brought this notion to Leipzig. And of course, we can theoretically think, hypothetically think, but Čiurlionis got familiar with that kind of notion, maybe in Germany, or maybe from direct readings of his own things. Now, if we take Wagner's Overture of a Flying Dutch, here's the two examples of the Dutchman versus center. And I also outlined a little bit of the intervals we were talking about, diapenta and diatessaron, the first part and the second part. And as you can see, basically, there's a lot of that aspects of those two intervals, interplay of those, with resolution into the diapason and stuff. And naturally, this is used by Wagner, which basically Čiurlionis could have learned also from him. And if we take Čiurlionis' notes of his sonata C-small, then naturally we could see the same appearance of diapenta and diatessaron. And Čiurlionis, of course, he knew those terms because they were used until the 19th century. So for those of you who want to do more musical analysis, this is the key basically to start this. That sonata, the principal structure of sonata is the male and female opposition. Here is Hebakowski, who describes 6 principles of sonata. The sonata is a minor mode work seeking resolution into the major, a resolution that is usually granted emphatically in the recapitulation. The exposition subdivides cleanly into 2 separate maximally contrasting blocks. And the transition between the 2 blocks is minimized or made very brief. The first theme in the minor mode is generally an aggressive forte image of a tormented male in extreme crisis, restless, agitated, disturbed, or threatened. The second theme, sometimes slower and always piano when introduced, often through a treble register solo instrument, frequently a woodwind, is the static major mode image of a consolic or potentially redemptive female, self-assured, lyrical, beautiful, often circular, smooth and rounded in melodic, counter, and so on. The exposition introduces us to the 2 dramatic characters, while the development sets a plight of a masculine hero into frenetic motion. The resolution into the tonic of a feminine second theme in the recapitulatory space signifies a resolution of a hero's plight, and to underscore this, the second theme normally appears here in a grand fortissimo apotheosis as a climax and telos of a piece or movement. Basically, what we can see in the notes of Čiurlionis and Wagner and many others who do that. Okay, so of course you know that paintings are here of sonatas, and he painted a lot of sonatas. So basically, this is a quote from Čiurlionis, which I'm not going to read, but if you go into sonatas, another theory is very important, the theory of colors. And the theory of colors, just to make it short, I took it from the peripatetic work on colors, as well as on soul, who speaks, Aristotle says one thing, that soul and aesthesis is ratio, and logos is ratio, is the same meaning as ratio. So basically, we see, we hear because we're made of ratios, we're made of all this. If you go into the color theory, the light and darkness, which is a lot of in works of Aristotle. So I'm finishing just the major ideas, okay? So light and darkness, I will not go through this, okay? But light and darkness as true extremes, they constitute the entire colors. And on one side is the color of red, and on another side is the color of purple, which is also a lot of that in sonatas. Simple colors, black and light, color of fire, which is a color of light, and the two proportions which are derived from purple and the red color. So this is a mixtures given of the red and the purple. And the red and the purple is the same in a principle as a male and a female. So the proportion of the purple and the proportion of red signifies and builds up the entire theory of colors. And those theories of colors, the classical theories of colors, are based on the same mathematical principles, which is, again, arithmetic and harmonic means. So the mixture of music and the mixture of colors in ratios, in proportions, are exactly, absolutely the same, which were described mathematically by ancient Greeks. Well, I'm not reading everything, but I will jump at the end to sonatas. This is a beautiful description of a purple appearance in the sea, in the waves, which Čiurlionis uses in his paintings. And another thing which I want to just to say is sonatas. Therefore, when we look in sonatas, Čiurlionis has a very clear meaning, not only in colors expressed in sonatas, but also in notes. And all those rhythmical structures, they represent the male and female. And if you, for example, start reading the notes here, because these are the notes, and these are the notes, and these are the notes, you will see the appearance of diapente and diatessaron in there. You just need actually to visualize all that, not only in the colors you use, like reddish, yellow, fire colors and stuff, but also in the musical themes. The same here, the male and the female and stuff. So it is very easy to recognize the patterns of ancient Greek thought, of ancient Greek concept of harmony, which he is using. So I guess I don't have any more time for the presentation, but this is just a hint for analysis, color analysis or musical analysis, which can basically show us, reveal us that beautiful interconnection of two main oppositions in different forms. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's really very interesting explanation of ancient mathematical, ancient musical harmony things, which we can find in Čiurlionis. So questions, please.
Thank you very much. Simply one note only, because if we refer to ancient harmonies presented by Pythagoras and others, they meant natural intervals, and those fractions of simple numbers, they represent natural intervals, not temperate. And if we speak about Čiurlionis music or pieces of other composers, so they mostly deal with the nowadays 12-tone equal temperament. So it's not about the ratios.
Well, contemporary music is also about ratios. Everything what is musical and etc. is about ratios. And we can use basically that in ratios and explain that in ratios very well.
Once again, for instance, temperate fifth or temperate fourth, which you explain that those intervals correspond to ratios 3 to 2 or 4 to 4-3, yes. So tempered fifth and tempered fourth do not correspond to
Of course, because it goes back to the Pythagorean tuning in that case, which is very natural, which is not 442 in general. And this is full numbers, right? So this is full numbers coming from double and triple geometric progressions, right? So, but basically what we can take also, we can take contemporary tempered system and we can express that in ratios, in the theory of proportions. Yes, we can do that. We're gonna have a different proportions and different ratios, of course, in comparison to the Pythagorean ones, but all numbers, any numbers we take, we can actually understand them through the theory of ratios and proportions, even irrational numbers as well.
So, sorry, again, because for instance, tempered fifth cannot be expressed by ratios. It cannot be. It's infinite sequence of numerals in an intense system.
Yeah, so if we go into irrational numbers, for example, right? In a Pythagorean system of numbers, we can express those as well. So this is very possible, for example, to express square root or cubic root in ratios as well. Yes, yes. Yeah, I can definitely show you basically, which needs to build the Pythagorean system based on two geometric proportions, and I will show you exactly where we have irrational numbers. Yeah.
Yes, quite intellectual and specialized discussion now arises. Only I can mention that Čiurlionis really was very interested in the ancient Greek music, and he wrote about that it is the base of national music and Lithuanian folk music. So all this modern temperate music is another story, and so he was looking at Greek example for modern music as national music, as having ancient archaic roots.